Le Mans on ITV, sponsored by Audi.
This is the story of the world's most famous endurance motor race. Les 24 Heures du Mans. On this famous track, reputations have been made and records broken. Eras have come and gone. But Le Mans is more than a motor race. It's about passion. It's about human endeavour captured in a fascinating and sometimes deadly adventure.
C'est une course absolument unique et particulière. Elle a un retentissement dans le monde entier.
It is a great event, there's no doubt. I mean, it isn't just the circuit, it is the whole atmosphere. You go to Le Mans and it's electric.
En français, on dit à vaincre sans péril, on triomphe sans gloire. C'est ça. Quand on est seul en course et qu'on est loin devant, ça n'intéresse personne. Ce qui est beau, c'est les victoires qui s'acquièrent de haute lutte.
We're sitting in a cockpit at 160 degrees plus. We're struggling with the car. It's bucking around and our head with a helmet on is weighing 66 pounds pulling 3G around a corner.
My answering machine says, please leave a message. I'm in the car right now. And it started with, yes, I know you're in the car right now because I'm watching you on TV. You're going to break my record. This was obviously from Jackie X, and he said, well done and congratulations, and that he was having a glass of champagne.
In this programme, to mark the 100th anniversary of the Automobile Club de l'Ouest, the organisation behind the Le Mans 24 Hours, we'll take a look at the spirit of the race, the tradition, the glamour, the greatest moments, the most daring performances. We'll see the hundreds of thousands of fans who flock here every June from all four corners of the globe. We'll talk to some of the world's greatest drivers about their experiences here. And we'll discover just what it takes to win the greatest endurance race in the world. In recent times, the most successful marque around the Sarthe circuit has been Audi. The R8 finished third and fourth on its debut in 1999. It then went on to win 5 of the next 6 races here, handing Dane Tom Christensen a record 7th Le Mans title in 2005.
To finish first at Le Mans is a dream. It's something really unique and fantastic. And I had the pleasure in 2005 to drive the car over the finish line, and obviously this was something of a peak experience in my life. Great combination of teamwork and a fantastic race car, and then having this success, it's something very special.
The R8 constantly set new standards. The twin-turbo V8 machine weighed just 900 kilos. 40,000 kilometers of testing meant it had one of the most reliable power units around. But what most set the R8 apart from its rivals was its 6-speed gearbox, which could be changed in just 3.5 minutes, greatly helping to reduce time spent in the pits. In the 2000 race, the winning Audi pitted 29 times, remaining stationary for just 30 minutes and 6 seconds. Audi driver Emanuele Pirro of Italy.
Ma se vediamo i libri di storia, la macchina che ha vinto Le Mans è sempre stata quella che ha passato il minor tempo possibile ai box per riparazioni o problemi vari.
Good teamwork is essential at Le Mans, especially when you consider that a car will cover about 5,000 kilometres, the equivalent of an entire Formula One season, in just 24 hours. Results suggest it's something Audi have clearly got down to a fine art. Over the last 100 years, the ACO, the governing body of the Le Mans 24 Hours, has developed what was originally a publicity stunt into the world's most important and famous endurance motor race. At the end of the 19th century, interest in all forms of motorized transport was growing throughout Europe. In Le Mans, the Bollée family was at the forefront of the new industry. However, not everyone was happy to see Amadé Bollée at the wheel of his creations, one of which, l'Obéissante, he drove from Paris to Le Mans, a distance of about 200 kilometres, in 18 hours in 1875. He was regularly refused fuel, even if there was any to be had, and local children would often throw stones at him from the side of the road as he passed. By the dawn of the 20th century, Bollée's feats had given way to full-scale road racing between cities. But when these competitions were banned for being dangerous, the Automobile Club de France issued a challenge to see who could organise a race around a circuit. The forerunner of the ACO, the Automobile Club de la Sarthe, was chosen, and the date was set for the first ever Grand Prix. On June the 26th, 1906, 32 cars from France, Germany and Italy set off on 12 laps of a track northeast of Le Mans, which was over 103 kilometres long. The race lasted over 2 days. 21 cars retired, and victory went to a Renault with an average speed of over 100 kilometres an hour. It was the start of the region's love affair with speed. 2 years later, the Wright brothers tested their new aeroplane there. Ably assisted by the Bollée family, they used Le Mans for their first European flights. And in 1911, Le Mans also hosted the inaugural Grand Prix de France. In November 1922, press stories began to circulate about an event being planned for the following summer. 3 men, Georges Durand, the General Secretary of the ACO, along with journalist and racing driver Charles Faroux and industrialist Émile Coquille, were devising what was hoped to be a race like no other. Fabrice Bourrigaud is a senior member of today's ACO.
L'idée de faire une course d'endurance les a séduits beaucoup plus qu'un Grand Prix court, parce qu'ils trouvaient là la matière, justement, pour démontrer qu'on pouvait améliorer la performance des voitures, améliorer leur capacité, obliger les marques qui allaient courir cette épreuve des 24 heures du Mans à faire preuve d'ingéniosité, à travailler pour permettre que les moteurs, les boîtes de vitesse, les performances, le confort dans les voitures, les pneumatiques, toute la périphérie des voitures, progresse. Et l'histoire a démontré que ça s'est bien passé comme ça.
On the 26th and 27th of May 1923, the first 24-hour endurance Grand Prix was held in Le Mans. The hoped-for good weather didn't materialise, and the drivers and spectators were battered by a 4-hour hail, wind and rainstorm. During the night, decommissioned Army searchlights illuminated the corners on the 17-kilometre circuit. Of the 33 cars that set off, only 3 retired. The winners of that famous first race were André Lagache and René Léonard in a French Chénard et Walker, who covered just over 2,200 kilometres at an average speed of 92 kilometres an hour. 2 marques would dominate the race over the next decade, with Bentley and Alfa Romeo each taking 4 straight victories. This international interest guaranteed the race's survival through its formative years. The ACO rekindled the race just 4 years after the end of World War II. That first vitally important post-war race in 1949 was won by a relatively new Italian marque, but more of Ferrari later. Jaguar and Mercedes set engineering benchmarks during the 1950s, while another German manufacturer, Porsche, made its debut in 1951. Also later, we'll see just how successful the Stuttgart company has been around Le Mans. One of the defining moments of past Le Mans races used to happen before any engines had even started.
We have this fantastic thing called a Le Mans start. Le Mans start means you were on one side of the racetrack, your car was the other side, you run across, get in, push the button, and that was it.
But for some drivers, the race was all but over before it had even begun.
Tony rolled. He ran across and he jumped in and he put his foot through the steering wheel, which you think, well, that's pretty stupid. But, you know, these things happen. You know, you leap in and your foot goes the wrong way and then you have to heave it up and get out. Not disastrous, but certainly didn't help with his stuff.
The famous Le Mans start was eventually scrapped for safety reasons. In 1969, when Jackie X walked across the track, settled himself in his car and fastened his safety harness, the watching world thought the young Belgian driver had taken leave of his senses. But 24 hours later, X took the checkered flag. The following year, the drivers started with their seatbelts on, while 1971 saw the introduction of a rolling start. But the safety precautions meant that a piece of Le Mans tradition was lost forever.
Le Mans on ITV, sponsored by Audi.
The Le Mans 24 Hours is also known as an endurance Grand Prix. And it's not just a 24-hour race. The team managers, mechanics and drivers have all been working religiously in their preparations. Even on race day, everything starts well before the lights go green at 4 p.m. Five-time winner, England's Derek Bell.
You've got journalists, photographers and family and who else coming and ask you questions and want to talk to you. And in fact, you're starting to get rather tired because the race doesn't start till 4 and you've got to stay up another 24 hours racing.
During the 24 hours, on average, a car will pit every 40 minutes. Tyres are changed at every stop, brake pads every 3 or 4 stops, and drivers every couple of hours. The duration of a good pit stop, 90 seconds. During this long day's journey into night, the time spent out of the car is also a major issue for the drivers. Paul Frère is a former winner and now one of the world's leading motoring journalists.
En 1960, je n'ai pas dormi de la nuit parce qu'il est évident que je voulais avoir la certitude que la voiture était toujours bien en tête, qu'il n'y avait pas de problème. Quand on est dans les profondeurs du classement, je crois qu'on dort très bien.
The hours of darkness are the time when anxiety begins to bite.
We're not even halfway yet and cars have fallen out. I'm exhausted, I've had muscular problems and you think, how are we going to make this the end? And it's still not daylight.
Mentally too, the drivers are suffering. A recent study has shown that being awake for over 20 hours produces the same effect on the body as being drunk.
The worst time really is at 10 in the morning. You've still got 1,000 kilometers still to go and you feel like you've been there for days.
Some drivers have succeeded in staying behind the wheel for almost the entire race. Raymond Sommer won in 1933 after 20 hours non-stop, while Luigi Chinetti did a solo drive to victory in 1949.
Tutto questo fa sì che la gara sia tutt'altro che una passeggiata e già finirla, come diceva il barone de Coubertin, già finirla è una cosa, un gran successo.
However, not everyone has been so fortunate. In 1952, after over 22 heroic hours in the driving seat, Pierre Levey chose the wrong gear and destroyed the engine of his Talbot while holding a 4-lap lead. The race at Le Mans came about because city-to-city road races had been banned following several fatal accidents, most infamously the 1903 Paris-Madrid race, which left 8 people dead. What the ACO could offer was the thrill of a road race on a closed semi-permanent circuit that made use of public thoroughfares. Most famously, it included the Route Nationale 138, known to all motor racing fans as La Ligne Droite des Hunaudières, or the Mulsanne Straight. But in 1955, Le Mans was itself the venue for motor racing's worst accident. 2 hours into the race, Pierre Levey, who'd been invited to drive for Mercedes after his efforts in 1952, crashed into the crowd alongside the pits after his car clipped the back of Lance Macklin's Austin Healey. 79 people perished, including Levey. Paul Frère had been offered Levey's drive in the Mercedes before the Frenchman, but had declined as he'd already accepted an offer from Aston Martin.
Il est évident que 1955 fut un désastre. Ce fut le plus grave accident qu'il y ait jamais eu en course automobile. Mais je crois que la stratégie qu'avait adaptée Charles Faroux, qui était directeur de l'épreuve à l'époque, et que j'ai toujours admiré, je crois qu'elle était la bonne. Parce que si on avait arrêté la course, tout le public, bien entendu, se serait rué vers ses voitures et aurait complètement engorgé toutes les routes qui vont au Mans, et les secours auraient été beaucoup plus difficiles qu'ils n'ont été en 55 comme ça a été fait.
Several hours later, on orders from Stuttgart, Mercedes pulled out of the race, while its cars were in first and third place.
Mercedes decided, because John Fitch said, look, I think we should pull out because of what has happened. I didn't actually share his opinion. I couldn't see it's going to bring anybody back. I couldn't see, and obviously I did have an extra grind because we were in two or three laps in the lead with Fangio, and the Mercedes didn't break. You know, I mean, they were really a very solid car.
Following the crash, several countries, including France and Germany, banned motorsport. To this day, it remains banned in Switzerland.
Il respectait les normes de ce qu'on considérait à l'époque comme étant nécessaire à la fois pour la protection des pilotes, des voitures, mais aussi des spectateurs. L'accident de 55, il a démontré que ce n'était pas suffisant.
Jean-Claude Plassard is the president of the ACO.
À la suite, je crois qu'il y a eu des décisions très importantes qui ont été prises sur la sécurité du public. On a repoussé le public un petit peu plus loin de la piste. Sécurité des pilotes. On a mis dans les voitures les ceintures de sécurité. On a mis dans les voitures des habitacles pour les crash tests qui sont renforcés. On a mis des réservoirs d'essence qui ne peuvent pas exploser.
Mercedes wouldn't compete again at Le Mans for 32 years following Levey's crash. In 1999, the German manufacturer was once again under the spotlight when its cars were involved in spectacular crashes at Le Mans. Scotland's Peter Dumbreck and Australian F1 driver Mark Webber both had miraculous escapes.
I couldn't get the front of the car back down at that speed, and I did flip and saw the sky and the ground and the sky and the ground, so it was a horrible experience, and the car was very, very good in terms of the impact. It's very, very safe, but obviously those cars were dangerous in that situation.
Mercedes have had little luck at Le Mans. They've won it only twice, in 1952 and with Sauber in 1989. Since the first 24-hour race in 1923, the ACO has brought in many safety regulations. In 1926, crash helmets were made compulsory. Sandbanks, earth mounds and fences around the track soon followed. After the 1955 tragedy, the old pits were razed to the ground and new safety measures around the circuit were implemented, at a total cost then of 300 million francs to the ACO.
Safety-wise, obviously it's a lot safer, because when we were thundering down the straight in 71 at 246 miles an hour, I didn't know any different, and it was in another world. You get over 200 and it does actually feel a little different, and you know there's not much you can do to control it.
The difference between safety levels at the circuit in the past and the levels today couldn't be more pronounced. According to Jackie Ickx, a six-time winner here and an erstwhile teammate of Derek Bell.
Je pense que c'est la nuit et le jour. La nuit et le jour. Je pense que les progrès qui ont été accomplis tant sur les circuits que pour les voitures sont si immenses qu'on considère maintenant un accident grave comme quelque chose d'exceptionnel et presque inacceptable.
The Le Mans 24 Hours is such a feature on France's sporting calendar that you can almost set your watch by it. However, there have been occasions when even this fixture has had to be postponed. In 1936, an economic crisis had resulted in massive strikes affecting the motor industry and causing petrol shortages. As a result, the ACO was forced to cancel the race that year. The start of World War II meant that the race was again put on hold. During the conflict, the Luftwaffe used the airfield next to the circuit. Consequently, it was heavily bombed by the Allies. The area around the pits in particular was badly damaged. Despite submitting a request to rebuild the circuit in October 1946, permission was only received in January 1949. Nonetheless, after a massive effort, the race went ahead in June that year. In May 1968, a series of student strikes broke out at a number of universities and high schools in Paris. The de Gaulle administration's attempt to quash the uprising by further police action led to street battles in the capital and nationwide strikes by 10 million French workers, roughly 2/3 of the country's workforce. In spite of the upheaval, the race did go ahead in 1968, albeit in September. Since the 1960s, the ACO has expanded. In 1966, the permanent full-length Bugatti track was completed. A Formula One Grand Prix was held there the following year. In 1978, Le Mans hosted its first 24-hour motorbike race. But 2 races a year won't keep the wolf from the door. Now, Le Mans stages 12 events annually, including the French MotoGP round and a classic Le Mans car race. It's been the venue for drag racing festivals and even an extra round of the Motorcycle World Championship in 1991, when the Brazilian race was cancelled at the 11th hour. And since 1981, a 24-hour truck festival has been held at Le Mans. Although not a 24-hour race, the 2 days of competition during the 24 Heures Camion include several races and mechanic and precision driving tests. All the events adding to the strength of the Le Mans brand.
Le Mans, vous le disiez tout à l'heure, est connu dans le monde entier. Et actuellement, on a presque 1,5 milliard de téléspectateurs dans le monde. Et Le Mans est télévisé dans 110 pays, je crois. S'il n'y a pas de télévision, il n'y a pas de sponsor. S'il n'y a pas de sponsor, il n'y a pas de course.
Le Mans is also expanding away from the Sarthe region in France.
On a aujourd'hui 10 courses aux États-Unis qui s'appellent American Le Mans Series, parce qu'aux États-Unis, il y a des grands constructeurs que tout le monde connaît qui sont Ford et General Motors. Mais on a décidé aussi d'organiser des courses en Europe pour penser aux constructeurs européens. Et puis on a commencé cette année 3 courses au Japon.
But even though Jean-Claude Plassat is the president of the ACO, he rarely gets to see much racing during the 24-hour race each June.
Le président ne regarde pas beaucoup la course parce que le président est beaucoup demandé par beaucoup de gens qui pensent que c'est la seule journée de l'année où on peut voir le président, parler avec lui, alors que le président est là, présent ici toute l'année. Il est bénévole, il est volontaire, mais il est là toute l'année. Et donc pendant 24 heures, il y a beaucoup de gens à voir et on ne suit pas la course comme on voudrait la suivre.
During the 1930s, Enzo Ferrari had been team manager of Alfa Romeo. After the war, he raced his own cars, which won on their debut at Le Mans in 1949. Scuderia Ferrari was again successful here in 1954 and 58, but it was during the first half of the 1960s that Ferrari really made a name for itself at Le Mans. Enzo Ferrari was resolutely single-minded. He would often row with his own drivers and technicians, not to mention race organisers, and would interpret rules in a unique manner. Paul Frère won Le Mans in 1960 driving a Ferrari Testarossa with Belgian compatriot and war hero Olivier Jean de Bien.
Ferrari était certainement un homme difficile, c'est certain, et qui, à partir du moment où son écurie a pris de l'importance, est devenu star parmi les voitures de Formule 1 et d'endurance d'ailleurs aussi. Il était devenu assez insupportable avec les gens qui désiraient le voir. Il faisait attendre n'importe qui, même des personnes haut placées, pendant des heures après l'heure qui avait été fixée pour le rendez-vous.
From humble beginnings, Ferrari grew to become a colossus of motor racing. His philosophy was to produce powerful engines, usually at the expense of the car's handling. It often took great skill and verve to drive a Ferrari to victory. However, this didn't stop Ferraris winning Le Mans consecutively from 1960 to 1965. In fact, during these years, only 8 non-Ferraris would place in the top 6. In 1963, a Ferrari 250p became the first mid-engine car to triumph here. It was also the first all-Italian car and drivers combination to take the checkered flag at Le Mans, with Ludovico Scarfiotti and Lorenzo Bandini at the wheel. That year, Ferraris finished 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. Jochen Rindt's win in 1965 remains the last time Ferrari triumphed at Le Mans.
Le Mans on ITV, sponsored by Audi.
On the other side of the Atlantic, Ford had always thrived on mass production. Between 1908 and 1927, over 15 million Fords rolled off the production line in Detroit. But it wasn't until 1963 that the company decided to enter a factory team to race at Le Mans. To facilitate their entry to top-level racing, Henry Ford Jr. had offered $15 million to buy Ferrari. However, negotiations faltered and the deal collapsed. Snubbed, Ford had an axe to grind. Millions of dollars were injected into the project. An unhappy Phil Hill, a former F1 world champion with Ferrari, had even moved from the Scuderia to help out. In 1966, with Ferrari weakened by industrial problems back home, the scene was set for the new Fords to shine. In practice, they'd reached the highest speeds ever recorded at Le Mans, 330 kilometers an hour along the Mulsanne Straight. That year, Chris Amon and Bruce McLaren led home a Ford 123. It had taken them 3 years to register their first win. That said, the works team had come to France with 8 Mark IIs and 5 GT40s, so they meant business. In 1967, Ford's new Mark IV proved unstable at speed. During practice, the car's windscreens broke in the drivers' faces at over 320 kilometers an hour. But in the race itself, a Ford reached the finish line in one piece, and more importantly, in first place, just ahead of 2 Ferraris. Americans Dan Gurney and A.J. Foyt had driven an American car to victory, breaking all the existing speed and distance records along the way. Ford was victorious again at Le Mans in 1968 and 69, but the end of the 60s marked the end of the duel between American grit and Italian flamboyance. The Ferrari-Ford battle had given Le Mans a spectacular decade of racing and cemented its place as the most glamorous endurance event in the world. And talking of glamour,
motor racing was glamorous. I would certainly keep my eyes open for good-looking girls around circuit, but it doesn't happen now.
For decades, Le Mans has lured people from all over the world. In 1979, Hollywood legend Paul Newman didn't just show up for a photo opportunity. He raced and finished second overall and set the second fastest time amongst the drivers of his team. From sporting champions like downhill skier Jean-Claude Killy to actors and fashion models, Le Mans offers the opportunity to see and be seen at one of the biggest shows around. Le Mans has also proved irresistible to some of the world's top film directors. Claude Lelouch, director of A Man and a Woman and the 9-minute Ferrari through Paris movie Rendezvous, made a film here in 1964 called Les 24 Heures d'Amant, using the race as a backdrop to a love story. The most recent film to be made featuring Le Mans came in 2002 with Luc Besson's adaptation of Michel Vaillant. But one film in particular has given more publicity to Le Mans than any other. In 1970, Steve McQueen, himself a very competent racing driver, made Le Mans, which featured footage of the race with set-up shots using drivers like Joe Siffert and Derek Bell. This was no bad thing, considering some of the stunts McQueen pulled whilst trying to get the best shots.
As we came through, there on the white line in the middle of the road was a cameraman lying there holding the camera like this, lying down, holding the camera. John Sturgis gets on his intercom thing and he says, "Steve, get down here with you." So Steve comes polling up. And John says, "What the heck are you doing down there?" He said, "You put a cameraman in the middle of the road." And Steve said, "I didn't put a camera in the road." He said, "Well, Joe just said, there's a cameraman lying in the middle of the road taking a film." And Steve says, "Yes, it was me."
Despite being panned at the time, for fans of motor racing, the film has become a classic.
Il y a la vitesse, il y a le danger, il y a beaucoup de choses qui sont, beaucoup d'émotions et qui sont extraordinaires. Et je crois que les hommes de cinéma ressentent très fort cette émotion et veulent la retransmettre.
However, so influential was Le Mans, the film, in Japan, that it inspired the bosses at Mazda to attempt to qualify a car for the race. In 1973, the Mazda MC73 lasted 79 laps on its debut before the clutch gave out. 18 years later, in 1991, after Toyota and Nissan had also tried their luck here, Mazda, helped by Jackie Ickx in the role of a consultant, became the first and to date only Japanese manufacturer to triumph at Le Mans. It was also the first and only time a Wankel rotary engine took the honours here. It was banned the following year by the FIA.
Le Mans on ITV, sponsored by Audi.
Over the years, there have been some very close finishes at the end of 24 hours of hard driving. In 1933, when Alfa Romeo was the dominant marque, Italian Tazio Nuvolari defeated his compatriot and fellow Alfa driver Luigi Chinetti by just 10 seconds. That's a distance of about 400 meters. In Ford's staged finish of 1966, victory was given to Chris Amon, even though he'd been running second to Denny Hulme for a lot of the race. It was decided that because he'd started further back on the grid 24 hours earlier, he'd travelled further than Hulme.
History will probably say that that was my greatest win, because there wasn't too many other ones. But one of the nice memories I have of Le Mans is that it was with Bruce McLaren, and we were both New Zealanders, and it was huge to both of us at the time, I think.
3 years later, Ford's star was waning, while the new Porsche 917 was turning heads and beginning to make a name for itself. The 1969 race developed into one of the most dramatic scenes at Le Mans. Because of the nature of the racing, that year's event was dubbed a Grand Prix and turned into a war of attrition between German Hans Hermann in a Porsche 908 and Jackie Ickx in a Ford GT40, by comparison an automotive pensioner. It boiled down to a sprint on the last lap. But with the Porsche hampered by mechanical problems, X took the first of his 6 wins by just over 100 metres. It was the closest unstaged finish in the history of Le Mans. Each year, 250,000 spectators come to the Le Mans 24-hour race.
Tous ont une passion et tous veulent vivre le plus près des voitures.
A large number of those fans come from over the channel. Commonly, 40 to 50,000 British petrolheads will make the annual pilgrimage to Le Mans.
So many Brits go over, there's the whole build-up. You know, they go over on the ferries, they go through the tunnels from Britain. And it was just so wonderful on a Monday night to come back on the ferry with all the guys that had been watching the race. And they just thought it was wonderful that I sat with them and chatted and had dinner with them, with my family. It's the whole atmosphere.
British fans hadn't seen a British manufacturer take the checkered flag here since the Jaguar domination of the 1950s and the 1959 win for Aston Martin. But 1988 made up for all those years of waiting. Tom Walkinshaw Racing brought 5 7-litre XJR9 Jaguars to the race. A complete spare car, enough spares to rebuild all 5 cars again, and had a private plane on standby in case they ran out of parts. They also brought 14 drivers, a team of over 100 people, and 2,500 tyres. In the second fastest Le Mans ever, the lead changed 22 times, with a victory eventually going to the Jaguar of Jan Lammers, Andy Wallace and Johnny Dumfries. Considered one of the greatest moments in Le Mans history, the Jag win also brought an end to Porsche's dominant run of 7 consecutive victories. It's been reported that French spectators as well as British had tears in their eyes. Such was the atmosphere at the finish. To cater for all these spectators, 40,000 baguettes and 10,000 tons of chips are served up, all washed down with over 72,000 litres of lager. However, there are only 65 toilets around the circuit. This is an endurance event in every sense. As the cars race through the night, there's always the famous fun fair for the spectators to visit. And with the dawn, the wreckage of the night is clear for all to see. Then at 4 p.m. on Sunday, after 24 hours of racing, some spectators allow their emotions to get the better of them.
C'est moi qui, en 60, qui ai fait le dernier tour, le dernier relais, et voir tout ce monde qui se rassemble, il y a de plus en plus de monde autour des circuits, et qui dans le dernier tour déjà applaudissent, et puis quand tout est terminé, que la foule envahit le circuit comme ça, la voiture a été beaucoup plus abîmée par les gens à l'arrivée qu'elle n'a été abîmée en course.
While for some drivers, the support of some fans goes beyond just cheering.
I met my first wife there. I was standing on top of the pits watching what was going on, and I saw this girl on the other side of the track, and I thought, she looks pretty good. And I got a pair of binoculars and pretended I was watching the cars going by and focused in on her. I thought, boy, all right. So then I waved, and she waved back. And so I said, well, you know, why don't you come over here? And she said, I haven't got an armband. So I took one and held it up and said, well, meet you underneath. So I met her in the tunnel.
Le Mans allows you to get near your heroes, and they in turn appreciate the event all the more for it.
Any success you have at Le Mans, it's nice to share that with the fans.
I think fans are very important. They're the reason that we're at the racetracks. And to have people who go to the lengths they do to enjoy our sport, I think that we do owe them something. Yes, I think they're very important.
French fans have had a moderate number of victories to celebrate over the years. Marques like Chenard et Walker, La Lorraine and Bugatti took 6 wins before World War II. However, following the Talbot victory in 1950, French success dried up at Le Mans for 22 years. But then in 1966, the motor racing branch of industrial group Mécanique Aviation Traction started competing at Le Mans. In 1972, Matra proved it was a force to be reckoned with.
Matra avait exactement les moyens nécessaires pour mettre en place ce qu'il fallait pour essayer de gagner Le Mans contre Ferrari et contre Porsche.
With a 3-litre limit imposed on the sports cars in 72, French expectation was high for the Matra V12s. Even the president, Georges Pompidou, was at the circuit. To the delight of the crowd, Matras finished first and second, with victory going to Henri Pescarolo and Graham Hill. The Britain's win meant he became the first driver to claim motor racing's triple crown: Formula One world champion, Indy 500 winner, and now Le Mans. The following year, Matra succeeded again, this time defeating a concerted effort from the Works Ferrari team, the last time Maranello sent a factory squad to Le Mans. Matra and Pescarolo took their third straight win in 1974, and the team decided they had nothing more to prove and called it a day. More French success followed in 1978, when Renault took a spectacular win, and in 1980 when Jean Rondeau became the first man to drive a car of his own construction to victory at the 24 Hours. In 1988, a WM Peugeot became the first car in Le Mans history to break 400 kilometers an hour. Factory Peugeots went on to win in 1992 and 93. But there have been no French victories at Le Mans since. It's now down to Pescarolo again. A 4-time winner here, he raced a record 33 times around the Sarthe circuit. Since 2000, he's been boss of his own team. His cars were quickest last year, but just not as reliable as the Audis. Maybe this year, Pescarolo can rekindle the joys of winning at Le Mans for himself and all the French fans. When it comes to technology, car manufacturers have constantly pushed back barriers in their quest to develop their product. And from reliability to aerodynamics, Le Mans has assisted with this progress. More powerful headlamps, driver safety features, disc brakes, fuel-efficient, reliable engines, windscreens, windscreen wipers. Features developed at Le Mans are now commonplace on family cars. As well as technological progress, stories abound of mechanical ingenuity. In 1933, the fuel tank on Nuvolari's Alfa Romeo sprang a leak. His mechanics first used some melted soap before a collection of their chewing gum was rolled up to fill the hole. It did the job, as the Italian great took his only Le Mans victory by just 10 seconds.
I drove a Mazda there, I think a saloon, really fast car, but there was no air ducting properly, and it kept misting up on the windscreen. I mean, I can't tell you how difficult it was.
In the 1950s, Jaguar won the race 5 times, thanks in no small part to aviation technology used in the design of its cars. The Coventry firm was also responsible for the introduction of disc brakes, when most other manufacturers employed the less effective drum brakes. However, the models of yesteryear are a far cry from the space-age carbon fibre and Kevlar twin-turbo beasts that charge down the Mulsanne Straight at over 300 kilometres an hour today.
Cars these days, the brakes are the major difference. And it is, for me, it's the braking getting into the corner that is amazingly fast. That's something you have to adapt to. And somebody, if Sterling got in it, or Paul Fred got in to drive a current car, they wouldn't believe the braking.
La différence, c'est que ces voitures d'aujourd'hui sont beaucoup plus faciles à conduire. Avec les boîtes de vitesse actuelles, d'abord, on n'a plus que 2 pédales. Donc on ne s'occupe plus de la pédale d'embrayage, de double débrayage pour changer de vitesse, tout ça. C'est clac, 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 les petites palettes sous le volant. Et ça simplifie beaucoup les choses.
Teams frequently refer to Le Mans as a race where up to 85% of the time is spent on full throttle, meaning immense stress is put on engine and drivetrain components. Chris Amon, the 1966 winner, had his own method of dealing with possible mechanical problems.
I think in '71 with the Matra. I was driving with Jean-Pierre Beltoise, and we were running second at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, which meant that we only had 6 hours to go, and something broke on the car. The next year I was driving again with Beltoise. I said to him, you know, if this car's not going to finish, let's get it over. And the engine broke on the first lap. So he followed my instructions.
When it comes to the present day, Audi is once again raising the bar as far as technology is concerned. Following the success of the R8, the team from Ingolstadt has developed the R10. When it was unveiled in Paris recently, it was described as the most sophisticated and technologically advanced sports car ever made, with its 5.5-litre V12 diesel engine. Although it's not the first diesel car to appear at Le Mans, that was the Delettre in 1949, the R10 may well become the first one to win here. There is one car manufacturer that has won here more than any other. For Porsche, Le Mans was like a religion. Derek Bell won 4 of his 5 Le Mans titles with Porsche, all in the 1980s.
It was the most wonderful part of my life, because although I had great times with other teams and Ferrari and others, there was nothing like winning with Porsche at Le Mans, and then to win it, you know, the number of times we did.
Ferdinand Porsche started the company in 1931, but between its Le Mans debut in 1951 and the end of the Ford era in 1969, the German manufacturer didn't win. 120 starts had produced index of performance success, but no overall triumph. So Porsche developed a car specifically to win Le Mans, the 917. And in 1970, a Porsche at last took the checkered flag here. Indeed, 917s finished first and second. The Stuttgart company also won all the race categories. The following year, 33 of the 49 starters were Porsches. Once again, 917s took first and second places and broke all existing speed and distance records. In the late 1970s, Porsche unveiled the 936. In the hands of Jackie Ickx, the car scored 3 more wins for the German marque in 76, 77 and 81. In 1982, the FIA toughened its regulations on the fuel consumption and the aerodynamics of the new Group C cars. It made no difference to Porsche. Ickx won for a record 6th time, and Porsches also finished 2nd and 3rd. The model was the 956, which became the most successful car ever to race at Le Mans. The following year, 956s filled the first 8 places. In all, Porsche won every race between 1981 and 87, a consecutive record that remains intact today. Non-factory Porsches won again in 1996 and 97, the latter being Tom Christensen's first success at Le Mans. The last time Porsche took the checkered flag here was in 1998 with the 911 GT1. But with the company once again racing a prototype car, the RS Spider, it may well be celebrating its 17th overall victory at Le Mans in the not-too-distant future.
Le Mans is very, very fast. There are no circuits in the world with so many fast corners. It is glorious to actually get a rhythm in those speed, and you can feel, you look at your rev counter and you're pulling 100 revs more than last time, and you know you're going to do a better lap than you've ever done in your life before.
As the layout of the Le Mans track has been modified 12 times since the first race in 1923, there isn't really an official fastest lap. The changes over the years have been made for the sake of driver and spectator safety. In 1990, 2 chicanes were inserted on the Mulsanne Straight in accordance with regulations of the FIA, the sport's governing body, stipulating that no straight could be longer than 2 kilometers. Despite the changes, there is a record for the highest average speed around the track that still stands today. In 1971, when the circuit was 13.4 kilometers long, Briton Jackie Oliver completed a lap in his Porsche 917 in 3 minutes and 18 seconds at an average speed of 244.387 kilometers an hour. That year also saw the greatest distance covered over the 24 hours, when Helmut Marko and Gijs van Lennep took the checkered flag, also in a Porsche 917. They'd covered 5,335 kilometers. Since 1923, the 24 Heures du Mans has provided an annual challenge like no other to the world's top motor racing constructors. Thanks to the ACO, it remains one of the most important sporting events on the calendar. Marques like Bentley, Alfa Romeo, Jaguar, Ferrari, Ford, Porsche, McLaren and Audi are now indelibly linked to motor racing, due in no small part to their success at Le Mans. But victory is also down to the bravery, resilience, skill, and a certain amount of luck of those behind the wheel. Over the years, some drivers have had more success than others. Belgium's Olivier Jean de Bien was the first 4-time winner. France's Henri Pescarolo was another quadruple champion. His compatriot Yannick Dalmat also triumphed 4 times. Great Britain's Derek Bell won 5 times. While the original Monsieur Le Mans, Belgium's Jackie Ickx, won it 6 times. But the most successful driver ever at Le Mans is Denmark's Tom Christensen, the race's only 7-time champion. That was a taste of the greatest endurance motor race in the world, the Le Mans 24 Hours.
Le Mans on ITV, sponsored by Audi.